So today we're going to talk about international. So there's three of us. Kerry and myself are going to talk for about 40 minutes. Then Laszlo's going to join us for 10 minutes, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. First of all, quick show of hands. How many people are already investing online? So I'm talking about online rather than trade or traditional marketing through distribution channels to agencies and wholesalers, etc. How many of you are investing online in international markets? Okay, so we've got a small smattering. And as a percentage of your international budget, how much is your online efforts? Anybody spending, say, 50% or more? 30% or more? 1 or 2? 20% or more? 10% or more? Less than 10? So we'll come back to this issue of the appropriate balance between trade and online marketing in a little bit. Brand USA.
Brand USA was created by the Travel Promotion Act a few years ago. We are. Does this one work? Clearly, I'm not loud enough. I have to get my good
Testing.
Midwestern, family of 100 people voice going. So Brand USA was created a few years ago by the Travel Promotion Act. We're just now really getting up and running. My background was with Sonoma County Tourism. Before that, way back in the days of Visit Milwaukee. So excited to really tell you guys a lot about what we're doing and where we're going.
Very good. Miles, we're a agency, a marketing partner, works with 80 destinations all over the world. In North America and the South Pacific, Asia in particular. And we've had quite a lot of experience in the online international space. And let's also introduce Laszlo. Do you want to say a couple of words, Laszlo?
Sure. I am probably the oldest piece of internet furniture in this room. 16 years in the industry. One of my professors at business school was looking for those losers who didn't want to be consultants or investment bankers. These people are called these days like out-of-the-box thinkers or something like that. And since I didn't want to be a consultant or an investment banker, I took this job with a company and no one remembered the name of Americans Online or EOL or AOL or something like that. So I became employee number 4 in their strategy group. And people were laughing at us when we put our email on our business cards. And they said, what is it? Is this your telex or what are you guys doing? So that's how I started. And since then, all I do is driving traffic to our clients' websites all over the world.
Thank you. And Laszlo will be joining us at the end to talk in depth, or at least a brief introduction to international SEO. So let's jump into it. So we're going to go through these key topics, looking at an overview of the international travel market, why it's important. We're going to move through that very quickly because just by being here, you're obviously indicating your interest. We're going to look at some global examples of destinations that are doing smart things. We're going to look at the issue of strategy and what are some of the lessons that Kerry's going to share with you about Brand USA and how they've been working online. Some of the things that worked, some of the lessons they've learned about areas of opportunity. Looking at research and some of the foundations of any successful international strategy. We've got 3 campaign examples, takeaways, and then we'll also transition to Laszlo to talk about SEO in a little bit more detail. So let's get started. So international travel is big and getting bigger. It's over a $1 trillion industry, approximately 20% of the world's GDP, about the same number in terms of employment. In the US, this is about a $120 billion US market, about 10% market share. And in 1995, what was the US's share of international travel? Anybody? It's 10% today. What was it in 1995? Well, there you go. Barry has got his figures right. Yeah, so 18%. So basically, the United States has lost in excess of 40% of its international market share. And why? Obviously, no Brand USA. A whole range of other factors going on in terms of international events. But also, the rest of the world has woken up to the potential of international travel and are investing heavily in this, and we'll look at some examples. This is also a fast-growing sector, and it's a tremendous growth opportunity for almost every destination in the United States. So it's 1.2 trillion, about 1 billion tourist arrivals internationally annually, and it's growing at double-digit rates, and very healthy double-digit rates out of many parts of the world. This is what international travel currently looks like in terms of the size of the world's outbound travel markets. Obviously, Europe's pretty big, partly because a lot of travel, of course, there is happening between European countries, and that's still considered international. You can see here that Asia, you know, a significant area, but still not as important as North America. But the big picture story here is what's going to happen over the next 15 years. In the next 15 years, we're going to see a tidal wave of change and opportunity in terms of the world's travel market as the middle class, particularly in Asia, but also in Brazil, really start traveling. Basically, we're going to have 1 billion additional members of the middle class over the next 15 years. So Auckland Airport's done some great work in this area with WTTC and The Economist magazine. These circles show the size of the middle class. Currently in blue, and then the outer circles in white are what they're going to look like in 2030. So you can see here that by 2030, 66% or 2/3 of the world's middle class will live in Asia. This is the size of the outer white circle is the size of the North American middle class in 2030. A further 13% will live in South America. So by 2030 combined, almost 80% of the world's middle class will live in Asia or in South America. As recently as 1990, over 80% of the world's middle class lived in North America or Europe. So this is essentially, in one generation, a massive transformation in the makeup of the world's middle class. And of course, one of the things middle class people want to do is they aspire to a range of experiences as well as things they can buy, and travel is one of them, and international travel is certainly on their agenda. So we've really seen in travel and tourism 4 great shifts of change. The automobile democratized travel, intercontinental air travel made travel possible over long distances, the internet and digital communication platforms allowed us to communicate with people. 3 major tidal waves, and this globalization of travel is the 4th great wave of change in travel and tourism, and of course a tremendous opportunity for every destination in the world. And one of the great things, of course, is we can benchmark ourselves against these destinations. Old world destinations that are spending heavily. Spain, despite their economic difficulties, has just recently increased their international marketing budget substantially. New world destinations like Australia, again, over $200 million they have to market internationally, and without some of the strings attached that Brand USA is grappling with. And Australia and New Zealand have been in the Chinese market, for example, for 14 years. They were the 2 first most favoured nations. So these sorts of countries obviously have tremendous experience, and it's a great opportunity to look all over the world at what they're doing and learn from that, so we can be fast and flexible. Even little countries. How many people have been to or even heard of Croatia? Anybody been to Croatia? A couple of you. Croatia, a little country in the Mediterranean, in the Balkans, part of the former Yugoslavia. They established a national tourism office about 9 years ago. 9 years ago, their number of Japanese arrivals was literally in the hundreds. This year, they'll be welcoming 160,000 Japanese visitors. And that's because they've invested heavily in both online and trade marketing into the Japanese market. And just shows really the potential and the competition, I suppose, that's happening all over the world with even small countries that you haven't even heard of. These guys have a $35 million US international marketing budget. Let's talk about strategy and plans, and we're going to talk about Brand USA, but what's applicable to every destination or operator in the room.
So we may be a little late to the game by passing a hat later, since Croatia can outspend us a little bit. So this is our overall digital strategy. Break it down a little bit in the next slide. But really what we're trying to get at is sort of these 5 key areas. So making sure that we're talking to audiences on the actual ways they want to be talked to. So is it social, is it digital, mobile, tablet, all of that. Making sure that we've got tailored experiences, location-specific content, and also making sure on that location-specific content that we're actually getting down and inspiring people. So they may have heard of Walt Disney World. So let's talk to them a little bit about regional things to do. Maybe the Florida Keys, maybe Space Coast. Let's move them to New Orleans if they're here without the kids and looking for a little bit of an adult getaway. And also, number 5 is really one of the most important areas, since we're structured very differently than a lot of our counterparts, and we are a little bit late to the game. Making sure that we've got content that can be dually owned between us and some of our partners, that goes beyond just written content, gets really into video, photography. So we're sending this clear and consistent message to the countries that both will market to and that destinations are interested in marketing to. So start with research. This was really key for us. We did a lot of research before we came up with our current campaign. And this is really broken down into the different perceptual barriers that people had. And some of the most striking things for me were number 4 about America being unwelcoming, number 5 about America is artificial, and the last one that really talks about how America is brash and arrogant, because those perceptual barriers go much deeper than some of the other ones. So America is too familiar, there's new and cooler places. Those types of barriers can be addressed really well with a great content strategy. The other ones that are deep-seated perceptual barriers, whether they're true or not, have to have a stronger strategy built around them. So this is really developed from our research, and some of the positive things we heard from people was this idea of freedom, tolerance, possibilities, coupled with pop culture, which is really one of the best exports that tourism can ask for. Also this sense of open and friendly, diversity, and we really wanted to capitalize on these. And so we came up with this whole idea about, America, this, place of awesome possibilities, and how do we build a campaign around that?
Undertook some research with a number of destination sites and asked a wide range of international visitors through an online survey what their needs and behaviours were in terms of their online travel planning. So as you can see, the survey was actually available in multiple languages and was run across 5 destination websites. And there's a range of findings, but one of the key things we wanted to emphasise was the familiarity gap. Basically, people may be very familiar with the United States, at least at some of these iconic levels, but at individual destination levels, they're very unfamiliar, even with the location, for example, of major cities in the United States. So being able to present and inform, engage and excite them about your destination also includes giving them practical information about where, for example, Chicago is, where is Denver, relative to other major points in the United States they may be familiar with, and then why do I want to go and visit there? So investing in content that fills this gap and moves them along the needle. You can see only 12% of people counted themselves familiar or very familiar, and these were destinations such as Colorado, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Memphis, so relatively recognizable major locations, but relatively unfamiliar to international audiences. What we also saw was quite a strong correlation between the types of information and experiences that international visitors were looking for and domestic. So all of these keywords came up, obviously in different languages, for international visitors. So they want a range of information that goes well beyond just having, for example, one page on your website translated into Japanese. They want to hear about national parks and historic landmarks. They want to understand the heritage, the cuisine. 2 areas of significant difference with the domestic market was they're particularly interested in shopping. So that's a factor in the domestic market. I think about 2/3 of Americans shop while they're on vacation. But for international audiences, it's a more important driver of their decision on where to go. So shopping information is critically important, presenting that, what's the unique brands, for example, in the Chinese market. Iconic brands are a significant part of the experience they're looking for because they want to go home, not just with photographs and memories and experiences, they want to go home and gift to their friends and family, and those gifts should include international major brands, which don't have to be American, in fact, major European brands. A huge destination for Chinese visitors is France and Paris, and they've done a remarkable job in this area of shopping, working with their major French brands. And visiting friends and relatives, spending time with family and friends, critically important in the domestic market, a little less important in terms of the international market. So we alluded to it before, the smart balance between traditional marketing through trade partners and digital marketing.
So making sure you've got a really balanced approach when you are marketing internationally is important. So focusing all your dollars just on trade development doesn't help really educate the consumer and inspire the consumer to try to discover your destination or even introduce your destination to them. So really focusing on a trade development strategy and a consumer strategy that really flows the same way that you would develop something for the domestic market. And I think that's important that when you're developing a strategy for a domestic audience, that's exactly what your strategy should look like internationally. It should contain a lot of the same key takeaways.
And this is validated by research that was talked about briefly at the Google session yesterday for those of you who attended. We've been a major sponsor of a study called Destination Unknown. Focusrite, a world-leading international online travel research company, looks at a number of countries, including 3 European countries, and asks them how they use the internet as well as other sources, including travel agents, in decisions around international trips. And you can see here the internet is a source of information used by 80% of international travellers from France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Much smaller, and this is at the destination selection phase, so a much smaller percentage use travel agents at this destination selection phase, but of course travel agents, to Kerry's point, are critically important at the booking stage. So it's ensuring you inspire and excite them, and then of course when they go to a travel agent, which is still used by many international visitors or most international visitors, you need to make sure that there's product to buy, that the agents are reasonably well informed, and that the transaction can be completed. So think about the smart balance between trade and consumer, a balance between established and emerging markets. So established markets like Canada, for example, and many of you may treat that as a sort of almost semi-domestic market, or the UK, markets you're quite familiar with, as well as these emerging markets, working out how much money, for example, and when to enter, say, the Brazilian market or China. And then a point we'll come back to, which is this balance between paid and organic traffic. It's critically important to invest in both, driving organic growth internationally as well as paid investments. So let's look at some of the lessons from Brand USA and other international destinations on what works and what doesn't work. So the areas of opportunity for every destination, regardless of size or budget.
So this is just a breakdown of some of our traffic. Our first 3 brand markets are clearly reflected here: Canada, UK, and Japan. We've invested some infrastructure in Germany to start educating operators on travel product and doing some groundwork before actually going with a consumer campaign. And Australia, and this is just the top 5, I didn't break it down any further, where we haven't spent any money, we've really seen start to uptick in the last few months. We all have limited resources, even though Brand USA is this big $100 million organization. We all face the same limitations, and so in developing a plan, it's really important to prioritize the markets. So we can't be everywhere. So figuring out, what your sort of sweet spot is and what markets can deliver returns for you. And Chris will go in a little bit more how to sort of walk through that formula but really laying out, top markets, secondary markets, and maybe markets you want to explore. Delivering custom experiences is really important. So when you're talking to people in Canada, that message won't resonate to people in Japan. So making sure that, not only have you prioritized the markets, but you've realistically laid out what you can accomplish and how you can actually sell this custom experience. And budgeting for measurement is the most important part. So if you can budget for it, that you can actually get some market insight before you develop a campaign and then do some measurement at the back end, that's the best spot to be in. Coming from the DMO world, I know that's not always possible, and sometimes stakeholders don't really understand the value of good research, but I think there's so much insight to be gained that it's really important to make sure you've built in measurement. These are some initial insights. Don't ever try to launch a website in multiple languages in 3 months. Biggest piece of advice. Be authentic, engaging, provide inspiration and information. Doing your research is really important. So our research really laid out where our plan was and really dictated a lot of the things that we're planning for in the future. Being strategic and not necessarily aggressive. So yes, it'd be great if we could be in 15 markets in 18 months, but that's really not probably the best approach to take. And finding unique ways. So like I said, we're all strapped on budgetary restrictions, but finding ways that you can actually reach people in a really meaningful and unique way that maybe doesn't cost millions of dollars. So the only metric we're really measured upon in the Travel Promotion Act is, did you increase international visitation, yes or no? If that's all we measured ourselves on, we wouldn't be very successful as an organization. So these are some of our overall metrics as a company. And drilling down, the second bullet point there, for me, is the most important, not only because it's where I really focus a lot of my time, but that's really where we can start seeing if we've moved the needle on some of those perceptual barriers. Because we can know the answer to that much sooner than we'll know if we raised international visitation. You can also track sentiment, track conversations, seeing what markets are really talking about you before you're there. So that's been a really big point for me. And these are our digital metrics so far. So this is how we're measuring ourselves currently, and things that we're looking at that will help drive what the strategy is going forward.
We would suggest adding a few other goals within your Google Analytics or Omniture, Site Catalyst, or whatever your web metric solutions are. So goals or conversion events are those successes that indicate someone's actively planning. And so I'm sure you've all got goals set up and you're measuring hopefully campaigns against goal completion rates. If you add critical metrics like viewing content that's relevant to international audiences, it may be a video, for example, or an itinerary in multiple languages. Business or event listings, again, seem to be, and we've done a number of conversion studies in terms of what are the things that are indicative of people who end up traveling and say, yes, that information influenced my decision to travel. Deals or offers, and then click-throughs or referrals to agency or airline partners in the international arena. So this is a great way in terms of your online marketing to bridge that gap between online to direct-to-consumer and your trade marketing. So hopefully there's good synergies there, and we've got some examples in a moment. So think about those goals that are specific to the international arena and make sure you've set them up in your analytics. How many of you have in your analytics goals already that are specific to international markets? So just a few of you. So something to go back and have a look at.
This is another really good lesson. Really knowing the privacy laws, it's very different in the EU and especially the UK. So as you start to develop your digital strategy, if you're really going to go into some of these markets, knowing the law is really important and making sure your privacy policy covers that. So the EU passed a privacy law a few years ago. The UK decided to adopt it and starting enforcing it earlier this year. And it really went around this whole idea about cookies and what you can track and what you can do. And you have to give people the ability to opt out of cookies, and that includes tracking them through analytics. Which is unfortunate from a marketing perspective because we all want to be able to see how people are using the site, but you also have to sort of know and respect the law of the land when you go in to develop these programs.
So, as we heard from Google this morning in one of the sessions, this is a fast-changing area, but certainly what you need to ensure is have a look at your privacy policy and make sure it represents best practice in the area of anonymous data and the option of people opting out of tracking. So you don't necessarily have to go to the step of translating the privacy policies, but if you're particularly active in certain markets, that may be a step that is worth taking.
So learning from all of those things that we've really gotten a chance to watch from when we launched on April 23rd until the end of September, you know, really developing more custom content areas, because that's really where people are coming to our site and what they're looking for. Having the updated travel journal sections, which we're partnering with Miles on, allows destinations to really co-own content. So they are able to pick markets, subject matter, so maybe it's shopping, maybe it's great outdoors, maybe it's wine travel. And not only is there written content, but there's actually visuals to go along with that. So there's photos, there's videos, there's things that tell the story beyond just content, and it's all natively written. So that's really sort of where we're trying to go. Instead of it all being translated, it's actually written natively by somebody within that country. So it really works to inspire them in the language and the way it's written. So that's kind of the direction we're trying to build out. The travel information section is one of our most trafficked areas, and these people are clearly qualified leads. If you're going to take the time to research the entry policies to the United States, which from some countries are a little bit, they're meaty, and you need a lot of information, and you need to plan well in advance. Making sure that we're giving people all the appropriate information, especially on exit policies, so they know if they come to Kentucky and they buy bourbon, that if they can legally take that back or not. And so we don't have them leave after a great vacation with a really negative experience. So we're really going to focus in on that area and making sure that we're clearly telling the message to the right people. And then TripTuner is this really great application. Ted Evers, the CEO, will be here tomorrow. But it's really a travel inspiration tool that takes the idea, these experience tiles we have on our website, one step further, and allows people to sort of self-segment what they're interested in. So for me, I don't have children, so when I travel, I want a beach vacation, I want 4-star hotels, I don't want screaming kids everywhere. So I want to quickly see what destinations reflect how I want to travel, and TripTuner is really great for that, especially having people being introduced to the United States. So if they're interested in beach travel, clearly the beaches in Nantucket are different than South Beach, different than, you know, Texas, different than California. So really going under that like never before, unexpected, but really fitting into that sort of psychographic profile of what people, who they are and how they want to travel.
Actually, a great destination for practical travel information in multiple languages is Copenhagen. Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark, has got a great practical travel information section that would be worth checking out to see the sort of information they have. So, distilling all of these messages down, what are the sort of key takeaways in terms of your international marketing strategy? So we heard about customizing your message for each unique international audience, and that of course means working out what is unique and special about your destination. You've got to plan and budget for measurement, and that means defining specific goals, success events, or conversions that are going to be indicative of someone who's moved beyond just responding to actively planning. Content, investing in that storytelling is critically important. Balance of paid and organic, we're going to talk about this in a moment. Getting an appropriate mix of channels and media appropriate to the audiences in each market. And then we've got to integrate it with our traditional international marketing. And so that can be a challenge. I mean, there's some sensitivity, let us say, from some trade partners about destinations doing direct-to-consumer advertising, online or offline. And that's something you've obviously got to work through. But as we've seen, it's critically important to get the message out about your destination. So look at ways in which you can partner with them and present your online marketing as a plus to their efforts, because you're essentially creating the inspiration component. So Kerry alluded to this before in terms of a selection matrix. So when you're going through the process of deciding which international markets are right for you, here's some factors to think about. I just want to highlight a couple of them. Air routes or easy connections, critically important. If you look at the literature, the research the world over, the amount of seats on direct flights or near direct flights in terms of good connections from hub cities is critically important in terms of your marketing success. So there's many, many examples of destinations that have put enormous resources into foreign markets, and they've really got relatively modest returns if the capacity is not there or the easy flights are not there. So you need to obviously identify international markets with good route connections. Obviously matching your destination with each market. What do you have that's unique and special and will engage with the interests? And there's a great matrix that Brand USA have put out from their research by international market, by interest, that sort of highlights, it's all color-coded, showing the sort of priority interests in each international market. And then this last point, international marketing partnerships. So for many, particularly smaller destinations, international visitors are very unlikely to come to just your city or just your state. And so they're going to be creating an itinerary. So think about ways in which you can work with other cities, other states, that creates a coherent itinerary for them that makes sense. So we've got 3 examples we'll very quickly run through, and then we'll dive in more detail in terms of international SEO. So content and organic search. Invest in content, and that can include video content, for example, and Kerry's already talked about the content program that we're running with them. But that includes itineraries, it includes practical information, it includes information on the areas of interest that you've identified. For example, shopping. Where are the shopping malls? What are the iconic brands and retail experiences that people can look for? And present that. We've recently been involved with an international destination and their Chinese language site. And one of the things that really was highlighted there is the importance of photography that resonates with international audiences. So not just these sorts of images, but these sorts of images that have the target market presented in them. So the research that's been done again in many international markets, people want to see people that look like them. So if you're targeting, for example, Brazil, you're targeting, for example, China, invest in photography showing visitors from that market enjoying your destination or your experience or your operation. Organic search traffic, SEO, Laszlo's going to go into this in more detail. Really, a couple of key takeaways I'd emphasise was that it's really essentially the same general process as domestic SEO, but there's some important differences. Any SEO, of course, starts with content investment and resourcing that content area. And then you've got some issues around how do you structure and host your international content. Do you have, for example, an international domain? Do you host that site or that part of your site in that foreign country? And the issue of target keywords. Identifying the target keywords, obviously in the appropriate language, that are relevant. And there's subtle differences even, for example, between the UK and Canada and the US on spellings, on the type of language that different markets use. And so there's some great tools out there. Google have got a couple of tools here that you can type in English language terms. It will actually do the translation and identify, at least at that top level, the distribution and activity of those keywords across different markets. You can also play around with the different types of spellings and terms that are likely to be relevant in those markets. And Laszlo will go into this area in a little bit more detail. So that's the organic side. And then we have obviously paid media or online advertising, pay-per-click campaigns, which are also part of the co-op program that we're running with Brand USA. And we've done a lot of this work in this area with various destinations all over the world. And that includes both retargeting as well as traditional pay-per-click advertising through search engines. The key thing I wanted to emphasize here is the importance of targeted landing pages. So investing not just in the media, but ensuring you've got content and that you've invested in landing pages that are contextual and relevant to each of the target audiences you're going after. So in this example here, we actually developed 6 or 7 different targeted landing pages for each segment of the audience. So this one was geothermal, then there was one for romance and couples, one for family, one for adventure seekers, and so on. Another element that we tried to ensure is strong calls to action, both in terms of tour operators operating that market. So this is a New Zealand destination marketing to Australia. Value Tours are a major outbound tour operator in the Australian market. So these are offers that an Australian can go down to their local travel agent and say, I want to book this, as well as local operations and offers if someone wants to deal direct with accommodation or activities in the market. So you give people choice, basically. But that call to action, critically important in any campaign. And then managing your overall ad spend, not just against response. So that's, you know, how many clicks did you get? What sort of click-through rate and the cost per click, and not even just engagement like page views per visit or time on site and bounce rate, but make sure you're measuring those goals or those signals of intent to travel and really move money around based on the cost per goal completion as your primary metric. That's certainly the most meaningful measurement of what's actually working and what's actually likely to be influencing visitation. So, second example is social.
Well, I'll go really quickly because I know we only have a minute or so left. But we, in that original research that we did about perceptual barriers, in order to address a lot of those, we took a different track than a lot of other countries and created individual social communities for all of the countries that we were targeting. And, you know, I've hired community managers in each of these countries. I oversee a really robust editorial calendar. But they're also in charge of creating their own communities and really tying in things that speak to the audience that they're representing. And we really wanted to be authentic and help to really start addressing some of those major perceptual barriers. These are some of the ways that we can all partner together from a U.S. standpoint. I won't get too much into detail with this, but we really want to be able to tell your story and telling it through photography and having you really let us, you know, get inside your destination and your attraction and being able to send that across all of our international channels. This is from my home state of Iowa. Anybody here from Iowa? No. All right. So the state of Iowa can't spend a lot of, they actually
I've been
can't
to
spend,
Iowa.
There you go. They can't spend any money on things that are not in English. So partnering with us on the social side lets us be able to tell people about the Tulip Festival, which is really an amazing experience across the world, and sort of introduce people to Iowa in a way that is at no cost to them. So quickly, this is an example of a co-op program. I don't know if Travelzoo's here today, but we sort of worked with them on a 3-market approach, UK, Canada, and Germany. This will run for a full year, changing every quarter, and it's a way for us to integrate email, sort of actual landing page or digital experience, and actual path to purchase. Since Brand USA, we're not actually able to facilitate the sale of travel directly from our website using partners like Travelzoo that can, you know, our partners, our domestic partners can work with to actually send people down the path to purchase. So beyond just inspiration, but all the way to booking.
And we saw in that overseas example of Brand USA, which has already been briefly discussed, is this content issue. So basically creating content that's relevant to your destination, video, photo tours, itineraries and editorial that you can use on your site, can be used on the Discover America site, and is also syndicated out through other sites as well. So all of these are outlined actually in a booklet that's available on the Brand USA site under the, what is it, Kerry?
It's under the Partners Guide. We'll put the link in here so you can actually go right to it.
So the key takeaways before we pass over to Laszlo: have a plan of action, resource that plan obviously, pick your priority markets, so what markets are likely to respond and engage with the unique experiences of your destination and prioritize. Tell your story, and that means investing obviously in content that brings that unique experiences to life. A smart balance in all of these areas, and then something that Kerry emphasised, measuring success and budgeting to measure success. So basically measuring what's working and what isn't, and continually improving what you're doing in the international market. Anything you want to emphasise, Kerry?
Nope, that's it. I want to be respectful of Laszlo's time.
Yeah.
We can all learn a little bit from him.
Thank you so much. What a great presentation. A fantastic act to follow. I really enjoyed it. What a great resource. You guys should look around because you see the smartest people at this conference in this room. How do we know that? Because you guys are interested in growth. And where is growth going to come to your business, to a U.S. travel business? It's coming from international. It's such a no-brainer. With the exception of my fellow geeks who are just playing around like me and enjoying themselves. Who is the superpower in travel? Because SEOs love numbers. The travel superpower in absolute numbers is France, right? You guys are the travel experts. 65 million people, about right? And out of the 65 million people, they have 80 million visitors per year, right? Tourist visitors. The United States has a population of 311 million, give or take, with 50 million some visitors. So we should be right now at about, just using absolute numbers, just add 15 million to the population, 311 plus 15. So we should be in the neighborhood of 330, right? So that's why you guys are the smartest, because that's where the benchmark should be. By the way, if you don't want to use the absolute numbers, we can look at Dubai, where the majority of the population is a tourist, and the number would be really astronomical. There should be billions. So you heard my story about how did I get my job at AOL. Before that, I worked for CBS News covering the revolutions. Most of you in the room don't remember the Eastern European revolutions, '89. And when I got tired of being shot at by machine guns, I decided to start an ad agency and make peace with commerce. And that's why I love travel, because travel is about meeting people, meeting other cultures, and creating value, creating peace like that. So my presentation is an interesting line of thought from the standpoint of following Brand USA, which is a tremendous resource, and I would encourage everybody in this room to get involved with them. That goes down to a granular level, because we don't have $35 million, or not many of you guys have $35 million, but you may have 20,000 or 15,000. For that amount of money, you can actually dominate a niche space, because if you look at your website, the majority of the visitors, if that website is average in terms of optimization, the majority of your visitors are international already. Which means that if you don't have an international program, you are a shopkeeper that sells a product and turns away the majority of the visitors. So a couple of pointers about how to use the search engines as your virtual sales force. There are companies that understood a concept in the 1990s, the inside-out marketing. And that's why I really enjoyed the previous presentation, because it was talking about the perception of the United States. That's why the search engines connect as your virtual sales force, because we do nothing else but understanding how someone searches for a particular product and service, particular travel package. And if you show up on top of Google, you are the validated leader of that particular keyword. Therefore, you don't need $35 million if you have the right type of organic search engine optimization approach and focus. That's how you are going to get the visibility to be a virtual monopoly on relevant keywords. You don't want to look like this, right? This is how a website looks like. It's a little bit less glamorous than you know, the Sydney Harbor image, but oftentimes people ignore the fact that they don't show up on top of the search engine's results pages. And internationally, and that's one of the good news that I'm bringing here, internationally it's easier to be on top of the search engine's results pages because it's less competitive. What percentage of the world population lives outside of the United States, right? 96%. And our market is the most competitive from a search engine standpoint. Therefore, if you cut your teeth in a search engine market where Google only has 65%, 67% of the market share, and they are always on their toes because of the other competitors coming after them, it's much easier to move to a market where there are less competitors. Your customer has changed. The touch point of the customer is the search engine's results pages. You heard about the reverse marketing at the early morning search engine optimization show, where you essentially broadcast, instead of broadcasting to the world, you let the consumers broadcast their needs to you. That's what your competitors do. It's yesterday's data, so it's a little bit dated because the world is changing, but about 80%, 80+% of marketers are going to spend more money this year, according to this research piece. So that's the domestic environment. Internationally, it is going to change. It is going to be different because not every market is going to be as competitive as we are. Why are the search engines successful? Because we live in this sensory overload, and that type of a digital data noise is going to reach other markets as well. If you control your digital footprint internationally, the return on your investment is a multiple of any other channels. Search engine optimization as the foundation of your digital strategy, because you get the traffic for free, right? And you know the 3 steps: keyword analysis, page level optimization, link popularity building. The second best, and we talked about this, the social media environment is very different in each market. So every international market that you enter has to be tailored to, has to be localized. We don't like to use the word translation. If you have a localization linguist, that's what you need to work with. Pay-per-click ads, third best. Behavioral targeting, which is not always allowed in every market. Therefore, the search engines will be, again, your best bridge to that market, because you don't need to push and broadcast your message. They will find you in the moment of their need. And the last one is creating the email lists for you. So we are on the search engines. If you look at this environment, how fast it's changing, the LinkedIn presentation was very interesting. An interesting snippet about Facebook, that Facebook is used like LinkedIn in many countries. So if someone in China wants to friend you on Facebook, it doesn't mean that they just want to have dinner with you. They want to interact with you and build business with you. All right. This is what the internet was invented for. Depending on how committed you are to an international market, you can go as deep and as focused as having your website hosted in that country. Search engines give a priority to the local domains. So if Germany is a huge market for you, having a German URL and having a local website in German, it's not price, not cost prohibitive, is the way to go. This is one of my favorite slides, internet penetration. The reason being, we are here, right, roughly, and these countries, in this rush of the global middle class, rush to tourism and other entertainment, these countries, these markets are going to be more competitive. It's just a question of time. So you are also smart in this room, because they are going to be more destinations as they develop their infrastructure. And here is a quick case study. The importance of research. We had a engagement with a client. It was a hotel chain in Peru. And their slogan was, our buses break down. Every bus breaks down in Peru, but we fix them. And I thought that that was kind of strange, but that really resonated with tourists, because they know that things break down in Peru, and then you walk and these guys don't make they fix your bus. So the key was to stand out in this marketplace. So we did the research, and we came to really interesting findings, which was, out of the data, we realized what a huge demand there is for culinary tours, Peruvian kitchen, Peruvian cooking. That became one of the big profit drivers for these hotels. And then the next one was spiritual, Magical Cusco and the Inca Trail. We realized that was a biggest opportunity that they really did not focus on by creating turnkey operations for spiritual travelers. So, just in closing, this is happening. The U.S. lost market share. We need to turn it around. You will turn it around. If you control your digital footprint and define your personal brand for those markets overseas, then the results will come at a much higher ROI than in any other investment in marketing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. That was great. All right, we have like a minute or two for questions. So does anyone have any questions for our panelists? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. And please state your name and where you're from.
I'm just exploring the Chinese market, and Weibo is the equivalent to Twitter with 300 million users. So I'm wondering if anyone has any experience using Weibo to speak to the Chinese market, because they use that to get most of their information.
So yeah, we've worked with a number of destinations internationally in the Chinese market. So Weibo is actually a hybrid between Facebook and Twitter, and there's a number of social media platforms that are unique to the Chinese market, as indeed is the search engine. Can anybody tell me the #1 search engine in China? Baidu. So with subtly different characteristics. So the key thing in terms of Weibo is again a balance between content, organic content and paid marketing, developing a communication strategy that's likely to resonate with a Chinese audience. So a good technique that we've used is identifying local Chinese, for example, who might be resident in that market, have good connections back to China, and can be your sort of essentially expert, and they're actually helping you manage that. They're writing natively in that language, obviously, and it's tying in hopefully to those key messages that Chinese are looking for: iconic brands, shopping experiences, etc. And then, of course, tying in with your traditional or offline marketing with your agency partners.
You might want to talk to Anaheim right over here. She can give you some good insights.
In terms of the Chinese market, it's extremely easy to work when you are going there with money and you are offering a budget for them. The organic story is very different. Sometimes when you get on top of the organic results too fast, that's a problem. So you need to pace your expansion to China according to the local markets.
Okay, any questions? We have time for one more. I have one. Any others? I have a quick question, which is, can you guys just give us a quick rundown of kind of like top 10, 5 things you think that need to be on your set of landing page for an international market beyond the niche marketing that you talked about, Chris?
So I think it goes back to, you've defined your priority markets, you've defined your key messages, what are the experiences that will resonate with those markets. So ensure you've got a mixture of content that's going to inspire, and then content that's going to lead them through that planning process, including offers and deals. So you've got calls to action, and then the practical information that people are looking for, like maps. Where is your destination in relation to other key locations? Links to major airlines that will fly them to your destination, or at least can get them into the United States to connect through to your destination. So think through that entire travel planning process.
From an SEO standpoint, do the keyword analysis and give the market what the market wants from you. So build content based on what that particular market desires and drive your content strategy based on what the people want to buy from you.
Okay, since it's Brad, we'll let one more question. Brad?
Are we seeing any data that reflects the time of advanced bookings on international versus domestic? You know, that we're seeing a closed window domestically, even within 24 hours. Is that shortening internationally as well? Maybe not 24 hours, obviously, for a long-haul flight, but is there any data that reflects that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the Australians have done a lot of research in this space, and by the way, Tourism Australia as well as Tourism New Zealand, and I think the same in Ireland and Sweden, they've got great resources on the international markets that are all pretty much available. And so, you know, use it as a resource. And I think their research highlights that it is shortening, but it's still in that sort of 2 to 5 month phase at the inspiration level. Now, of course, you know, long-haul travel often takes years, even decades to develop. So there's a very complex range of factors that go into getting people to start thinking about a destination and then leading them through. But that final planning stage seems to be sort of 2 to 5 months.
I think it also depends about entry policies. So if you're coming from Brazil, clearly your planning window is much longer than if you're from a visa waiver country and you already have your ESTA. You can just find a special, hopefully on our Travelzoo promotion, book it, and then, you know, come and travel.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists.